Welcome, everyone, to the Creative Mountain Mama podcast. Today, I am honored to have Kristy Titus on. She is an inspiring advocate for hunting, conservation, and getting women out in the field. She has a passion for the outdoors and a wealth of knowledge. I'm excited. I feel like I'm about to go on like a splunking adventure, like dig into the wealth here. Kristy is here to share her experiences, insight, and wisdom. We'll be diving into her journey, the values she stands for, and how we can all incorporate elements of reliance and conservation into our daily lives. Kristy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a long time in the making, and we finally got
So
it together.
a year is the making, and you have the Pursue the Wild podcast. Now
Well,
I
that's
get to
actually my
interview
TV show.
you.
Yeah, no,
Oh,
my podcast is actually called Wild and Uncut. It's very
okay.
confusing because I have all of these media platforms that I also get them confused. So Pursue the Wild is actually my TV show, and then my podcast is Wild and Uncut. And then I have like this digital cell phone show that I self-film like my life on my ranch called Our Wild Life. So lots of different media directives, so it gets a little fuzzy on what I'm doing.
The fans of your podcast get to finally hear you on the other side. I get to interview you, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, because I'm normally doing the interviewing. So yeah, it's
I'm
great.
usually doing the interviewing and digging deep. Can you share a little bit about, you said you're staycationing right now in the off season. What is your day-to-day like?
So in the month of March every year, I really make a huge effort to stay home in March. So the first part of March I did some traveling for the first week of March, but the rest of this month I've kind of designated as home time. And really, it's just time for me to reset, keep a suitcase like put away. And then it's where I start editing. So my team and I really delve into creating new intros for the episodes. We start putting episodes together. We've got our first episode of 13 put together right now. We're working on episode 2. And so yeah, it's a big editing time. It's also where I kind of meet with my corporate partners and we start doing brand strategy, laying out commercial spots, billboards, things like that for the TV show. So it's a big office month for me, but I love it. It's like everybody's like, where do you want to go on vacation? It's like, I don't want to go on vacation. I want to staycation. I want to stay home. So every day I get up set my alarm at 6:30 in the morning and sometimes 5:30. It depends on what I have, but 6:30 is my typical go-to wake up time. I work out in the gym with a lifting coach 3 days a week, sometimes four. So that's a priority. And then I ride my mules 3 to 4 days a week in the afternoon. So what I try to do is get my working hours in between 7:30, typically start time 7:30. And then I work until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then in the afternoons, I go out to my property and I'll ride or feed. On the days I'm not riding, I don't typically go out as early. So on the days that I'm not riding, I'll work until like 4:30 or 5. Now that the days are later, I can get away with that. And
Yeah.
then I'll be out at my ranch until dark, typically every night. And I come home and have a light dinner and I go to bed and start all over again. Yeah. So that's
Super
kind of
disciplined.
yeah, super disciplined, but I have to be also, like on the days that I'm not writing, I'll be shooting firearms or like in the spring, it's a lot of cleanup at the ranch. So, dealing with moving manure around and like, cleaning up last week I cleaned up my hay storage area and I have containers where I store gear and sometimes in the fall when things get a little chaotic between trips, I just throw stuff. And so, like this weekend on Sunday, my goal is to burn and then to go and organize. And I'm picking up some new firearm platforms today, and I'm going to put some scopes on guns and start doing some training for ELR. I'm having some new arrows fletched. And so, my goal this year is to put in a 3D archery range at my place. And so, I'll start shooting. But it's supposed to be spring and we're getting 8 inches of snow today. So it's a great day to podcast.
Yeah, I was just in Jackson Hole and we were skiing and there was a ton of powder, a ton of snow coming down. We land in Colorado and it's sunny and 75.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be 75 here next week. So this week I'm trying to get all my like indoor projects done and things like that. And then next week, hopefully be outside more shooting guns and enjoying. If I can get some of my big edit work and pieces kind of put together this week during the snow, then next week I'll have time at the range to figure out these new rifles and have some fun shooting.
That's awesome. So you're getting everything prepped for April, May. When do you really take off? When's your first hunt this year?
My first hunt's not till the end of April for turkeys. So I'll turkey hunt and then I roll into spring bear.
Is that in Wyoming or are you
Yeah.
traveling?
Yeah, so one of the reasons I moved to Wyoming, well, I came from Oregon, and Oregon is fundamentally, the way the state votes really didn't support my values anymore. And I really feel like people, you have a couple options in life. How we spend our money and where we live are two things that we can innately control. And so I'm really careful about who I spend my money with and then where I spend my tax dollars as well. So I made the decision 3 years ago that my tax dollars were best spent in a state that supported my values. So I left Oregon, took my money with me, and I moved to Wyoming. And Wyoming's a great state. It's constitutional carry, Second Amendment sanctuary. We are a right to hunt and fish state, and it's great for people like me that love hunting and shooting and want to ensure that those rights are enshrined in our state constitution and that we're protected. Within those rights within our state. So, and the hunting is great here. So, every year I'm guaranteed mule deer and whitetail tags. I get elk tags. I get antelope tags. I get mountain lion tags. I get turkey tags. I get bear tags. So all of the hunting that I want to do, I can do typically, within an hour from my house, which is amazing. I'm so blessed.
Boots on the ground. How close are you to your nearest national forest?
I can be elk hunting in 20 minutes on the national forest.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Are you
It's
riding mules into the forest from your property?
No, not from my property. So
Mm.
my property is I have what they call a pasture here. So I have 255 acres and it's great for my 9 mules and horses, but it really is if you were running pairs, it would just be a short-term pasture. Um, but I don't have any direct access to public land. I am surrounded by other large ranches. So
Mhm.
I'm really fortunate because literally the nearest home from me is over a mile away. And as far as the eye can see in 360 degrees, there's not a building outbuilding another human that you're really going to see. There is a county road that people do drive up and down, but it is literally a wild place to live. So I don't live out there full time. I'm working on moving out there eventually, but I'm not quite there yet. So I live in town and have property out there, and it's amazing. I love it.
Okay, so you're living in town, just the land is okay, where you're pasturing.
Yeah, I have a commute I do every day. So, when I go out to my property, I have a half-hour commute each way. So it's an hour of driving a day, going back and forth. So I try to be really mindful of if I have stuff to bring out there that I make lists and I bring it, and if I want, to achieve some specific objectives, I have to make sure that, I'm prepared because my house it's just not convenient to run back and forth. So yeah.
How much how much time do the animals take? Chores and
Mules and
mucking
horses,
and
yeah, like mules and horses, they can be as little or as much time as you want. For me, I really believe in the philosophy, like when it comes to being in the backcountry and having a flawless backcountry experience, the more time I put in with my mules on the front end, the better time we have in the field on the back end. So, for example, like I've got some baby mules that I bought as babies. One of them was still not even weaned. She was 3 months old. They're now coming 3. And so I have been training them since they were with their
Mhm.
mom. So when they were 3 and 6 months old, when I would harvest a deer, I would bring deer hides out and I'd put deer hides on them. I started saddling them with a little English saddle. And like I've been doing rope work with them and tarp work with them and bounce balls and like all of the things. Then when they were a yearling, I packed them in, just led them as part of the experience. Like they didn't have a saddle on, they just got to come and have like a little field trip. And then last year's 2-year-olds, they packed little 30-pound packs. So they'd have like sleeping bags and mountain house on them and food. And then when my cameraman and I harvested deer, they actually packed meat and heads last year. So they got some true work experience as 2-year-olds last year. And so this year's 3-year-olds, I started riding them this week, so I
Mhm.
have 4 rides on them, so I'll ride them this fall. So I'll spend all spring kind of preparing them for them being my saddle mules this fall. So it's really important. I put a lot into them right now, especially at this phase of development, because when I get out there, I don't want any wrecks. And
Yeah.
I mean, I take ultimate responsibility. If things go wrong on the trail with them, it's because I haven't prepared them properly, or, sometimes just weird things happen. But as a whole, I try to really prevent and have a really great experience in the backcountry. It just makes everything so much like less stressful. So it depends. Like some people, they use their horses and mules twice a year and they just turn them out and then they kind of deal with whatever they got,
Yeah.
tasty animals. And I just don't want that.
Yeah. But you reap what you sow, right? So you get that training time in, you really take your time with them, and then that pays off in spades over
Well, and
their
I don't
life.
like you have a beautiful family and you have kids that you're doing things with, and they are kind of my kids in a way.
Mhm.
So, like, instead of doing sports or homeschooling, my homeschool at night is training training mules.
Training your wheels.
Well, and
Well,
I have a 4-year plan in no, well, 5-year plan. In 5 years, I'm getting a pair of baby miniature donkeys, and I'm gonna have baby mins. And but I am gonna breed 1, if not 2 mares this year for baby mules to be born next year. And so yeah, it's like always I'm trying to like the herd that I have currently, a lot of them started getting old and retiring and or passing away. And so these 2 mules I'm working with right now, actually I have 3, are kind of like that next generation to replace the ones that are getting to that retirement age.
yeah, 4-year plan.
Yeah.
And I'm on to your language here. You're taking accountability for what you're doing. You have like this really rugged appreciation for the woods. And who in your upbringing inspired you? Is this like your dad implanting this into you, or how did you shape your character?
Well, I mean, my parents are both so hardworking. They're incredible people. And yeah, my dad was really great as a kid. I always loved the mules and he never made me feel like there wasn't something I could do. So I started like my dad had this mule when I was 13 and he had a trainer put 30 rides on her and she didn't like my dad. She was afraid of my dad. So she'd buck off my dad and then she'd buck off my sister and she wasn't a good fit for them. But I was at like 13. I was like, oh, I'm going to train her. And I rode her
Hmm.
for years. But my dad never made me feel like, oh, you can't do that. He always tried to help me figure out a way to accomplish something that I wanted. And so that really laid a good foundation for myself to where I always believed, the only limiting factor I had in my life is something that I put on myself, that I'm capable of learning, I'm capable of doing more. And so, that transferred into my adult career. In my 20s, I had a friend tell me, he's like, you really suck at backpack hunting and shooting because I'd always had mules. And so I'd never done backpack hunts. So in 2012, I did my first backpack hunt and I started to learn about how to backpack hunt and managing gear and things like that. And then I got into shooting to be a more proficient and more ethical hunter. And so now shooting is a really big part of my life because when I go in the field, I want to make sure I've done everything possible to give the animals that I'm hunting the most respect in reverence in the harvest that I can. So part of that is placing the most terminal shots I can as accurately as I can. So I do a lot of shooting and a lot of training for that.
And that is, in the end, you have to take accountability for that result. Maybe
Mhm.
it's just being in the woods and being on the mountains. It makes you a better person. There's no one else to blame out there.
No, and that's the thing. Like I'm not, when I take my mules out, people are like, "Oh, do you have an outfitter?" Or whatever. Like, it's me.
Yeah.
Like even my dad, he lives 2 hours from me. So when he shows up at my house, usually I have everything packed up and kind of ready to go. We'll throw out our gear, we'll weigh it out, but day-to-day care when it comes to the ranch and the mules and gear and training, it's pretty much on me. So year round, it's really it's my passion and shooting, hunting, shooting my bow, shooting rifles. It's a passion for me and it is my responsibility. When things go wrong out there, it's also my responsibility. And so I take that really personally.
And you're sewing into the next generation. I was watching the bear hunt, the kid that got the tag and kind of had this legacy opportunity. What are you, what is your plan this next year for outreach and what does that look like?
So I have actually I did a fundraiser through FFA this year locally here in Sheridan. And so I have a young girl, she's 17, and I'm going to accompany her on a black bear hunt this spring. So that was a big donation to benefit the FFA program, which I really feel creates really strong leaders in our kids and helps them foster a good future. And so I was really proud to be part of that. So that's my first youth project that I'll be part of this year. Last year, I did some really fun stuff too. I went to the Bondurant, Wyoming. They have the Wildlife Fund, which is an extension of Wyoming Fish and Game. They have a kids camp, and half the kids that come are on scholarship, and then half the kids that come are local, also on scholarship. So they fly these kids in from around the country and around the state, and they teach them, the principles of conservation and outdoor education and a little bit of self-sufficiency in the woods. And it's a great program. I participated with that last year. And that's a really great program. I'm also a hunter ed instructor. So I in Wyoming it's very difficult to become a hunter ed instructor. It's like a 20-hour so 20-hour school for yourself plus your training curriculum in classroom. So I'm also a hunter ed instructor as well. So and then I do
Awesome.
tips and tactics in the past historically for International Hunter Education Association, so for IHEA. And then this year I also produced or I'm producing a series. I've got 3 videos out. I've got some more coming for the National Shooting Sports Foundation on safety, hunter safety, safety and ethics, transporting firearms safely, things like that. So I try to do a lot of outreach stuff that benefits families that have a curiosity for firearms or hunting and maybe don't know where to start.
Where could someone that's listening in find out more? And is it a national program?
So the NSSF, if you go to the NSS website and look up their Project Child Safe campaign, that's a great campaign. They've got a lot of the printed literature that we digitized, if you will, in video format on their pages now, and they will be launching the video versions on their pages here shortly. If they may have already done that, but they're available on my website, pursuethewild.com, or also on my YouTube, which is Pursue the Wild. Those are there as well. And then IHEA has a program, International Hunter Education Association has a program called Hunters Connect. And you can go on there and they have a huge digital library, some that I've produced, some that outside producers have done, with tons of content, which is kind of that next step from Hunter Ed. So, you take your kids through Hunter Ed, which is a great foundation. And then IHEA's Hunter Connect kind of has that next step. And then the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation also has a really cool program called Outdoor Class. And that's a paid educational program, but they've got great contributors like Remy Warren, Corey Jacobson, Randy Newberg, and then I'll be contributing some things for that one as well in the future here. So the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation's program for outdoor class is also another one. Just, like that next place. Where do we go now? We've
Mhm.
done hunter ed, or I'm a new hunter, or I'm an adult onset hunter. Like, where do I start? These are all just really great like launching pads for that next place. And then there's another group I work with called First Hunt Foundation, and they have chapters around the country. And First Hunt Foundation is a great foundation. Like if you're an adult onset hunter and you want to have a hunting experience, they have trained mentors that will help you get in the field regardless of your age, gender, whatever. Just contact First Hunt Foundation and they'll help you get those first steps that will lead you to success, which is awesome.
Is adult onset hunter a technical term?
Yes.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, adult onset hunter. Yeah. As it's just
Love
it's
it.
just that person that didn't grow up hunting. They're
Yeah.
adult and now they're like, okay, well, maybe I'm an empty nester and I want to do this with my husband, or maybe I've just decided that this field to fork movement or more of a locavore movement really is appealing to me, and I want to teach my kids where their food comes from, and so therefore I want to become a hunter so I can be a better leader in my household. So there's all kinds of reasons why people do it, but it is a thing.
I want that on an arm patch on my
Adult
my
onset
just
hunter. Are you an adult onset hunter?
I didn't go when I was young. There was a conversation I had with Haley Matchich, and I run through my hunting stories that are things that I should have figured out as a kid. But I was raised up, it was actually 18 miles. We had a hunting cabin. And so the men folk went, and I always um opted out. But my grandma has stories of women in my family teaching, going out in the field because you had to provide food for your family. There was no, you know, gender delineation. And one of the gals she has a story of her son with the deer on his backpacking out, and he's bawling. She catches up with him, and he's got a mountain lion on his back, and he's just following, the trail out. So it wasn't it wasn't a gender differentiation that long ago. And yeah, I decided to stay home. So I'm a late onset, it sounds like late onset dementia, late adult onset hunter.
Adult onset hunting. Yeah, yeah,
Adult onset hunting.
yeah.
So many of our listeners are women that are homesteading and looking to be more self-sufficient. What is that entry point to get them, kind of the confidence to get out there?
Well, I remember the first hunt I did on my own. Number one, I get lost. So I cannot be trusted. So, like, having tools that will give you confidence is really important and learning how to use them. So, in my 20s, one of the reasons I got involved with Safari Club International is that they, like, when they do their largest fundraiser, they only spend 30% going back to corporate. The rest of the money gets to stay local. And you can tap into that money locally. So they have humanitarian education and conservation projects that chapter wise they are required to spend money doing those types of projects. So I was a volunteer for my SCI chapter and I learned about this money and I was like, holy smokes, like I can use our education requirements and I can put together these programs and help teach and outreach in my own community. And so I think, for those people that want to start is finding the tools that are going to empower you. So getting keyed in with a nonprofit is really huge because you can have access to programs and potentially grant money to help educate yourself, but also your community. And so education is power. I don't ever recommend anybody just like go, hey, you should just go hunting. Like just go in the woods. It's no big deal. Find a team of people that you trust because everybody has advice and everybody has ideas, and there are many ways of doing things. And the more people you can garner advice from and find a way that works best for your personality style or your ethos, that's who you want to follow and listen to. And so, for example, like I'll go to a gun range and I have a lot of men that really like to tell me what I'm doing or what I should be doing, or they're telling me about their 30-06, whatever. Um, but what I did is I learned to, listen to those people like, okay, yeah, this is great. And I'm thinking 50 years ago, this was, this was maybe how we did it. But then, you take in for their advice. There is always, everybody has some bit of advice to give you, but then also, find like a trusted team of people that you go to for information, people that you respect. So they could have a professional career in shooting or hunting, but finding someone you respect that you can trust that their advice is ethical, and good. That's what I would always recommend people do. So when I wanted to learn more about navigation, so going back to me getting lost, I put on these navigation clinics in my town, and so you could do like Onyx watch parties at your house. Like, hey, we're going to get 5 ladies and we're going to do, Onyx. If you're an elite member, they have all of these great classes that you can participate in. So let's all join at my house. And these are free things for you to do. You can organize
Mhm.
and be your own champion for your own education. Let's take 5 ladies that want to learn, and we're going to do this online course together. And then we're all going to have our phones out, and we're going to learn how to use Onyx, because that is the most important tool you can have, I think, is knowing you can get safely from point A to point B, and back again. That's a huge thing for me. So safety in that capacity. The next thing for me was my shooting career, becoming proficient. So if you want to shoot a bow, going down to your local archery shop, joining a 3D league, and finding out from people information on what works for you. What bow do you like? What arrows do you like? Why? I mean, archery has taken me, I shoot for bear archery, and Fred Bear, I mean, his conservation philosophy, he is the granddaddy of bow hunting, and I'm proud to shoot for bear because their philosophy and their ethos is so good. And so really, establishing those limitations with a bow, establishing limitations with your equipment, figuring out what you're capable of. And then same thing with a firearm, learning how to mount your optic, how to make sure that you have proper eye relief so you don't get into a situation where you have an angled shot and you scope yourself in the forehead, or you can't get a full sight picture because your eye relief is incorrect. I mean, learning how to mount an optic, learning how to zero your own rifle, learning how to shoot off various positions that you're going to encounter in the field. Like all of these things, you can be your own champion and accomplish if you find the right team of trusted people. And so, you just have to identify what your goal is and then work it backwards. So like, if this is my end goal, what steps do I need to take that are going to lead me to success in that moment? And so it might be, okay, navigation, it could be fitness, it could be gear, it could be firearm competence, all of these things. And you just work it backwards. And then, if your goal is to do an antelope hunt in 8 months, well, what do I need to do every month or every week or every day to ensure that I'm going to be prepared when I get out there? And that's the easiest way to do it.
The hardest is to actually do it.
The best
Actually
part
stick to
is
your
actually
plan.
doing it.
There you go.
Best part is doing it.
That's the right
The
outlook.
hard part is showing up because, like for example, like everything I'm doing with my little mules right now, it was -20 in Wyoming. And I, read this book by Jocko called Extreme Ownership. So success, failure, whatever, you own that. And when you have success, you give the credit to your team. So when I'm successful, I say, hey, I had a great instructor. It's not me. It's my instructor taught me well, and I was a good student. When you fail, it's your fault. So why did I fail? How can I work this backwards? But, be -20 and I'm out there with my little mules. No excuse, because we have a goal. I have a goal. I'm like next week was it April 8th, I have them registered for a clinic. I'm supposed to ride them. I have 4 rides on them right now. So I have 2 more weeks to get my life together. And okay, I've set this goal for myself. Snow, rain, whatever, I've got to be out there, and setting a goal for yourself is really important, and having extreme ownership of not making excuses.
Absolutely. You earn the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, there's always things innately that can happen that are beyond our control, but I think when it comes to being successful at the end of the day, the only reason we can live with failure is knowing we've done everything we could possibly do and be real about it, like own it, like, hey, I have actually done everything I could possibly do and this just didn't work out. And that's part of it too, learning to deal with not everything's a victory. And Jocko has this really cool saying. They're like, oh, you didn't get the raise, good. You didn't get the job, good. You didn't get the opportunity, good. Because it just gives you more chance and more time and more opportunity to get better, to do more, to prepare yourself better. So, you didn't get a shot at an antelope this hunt, good. Next time you're going to be even readier. Like,
Yeah.
you have to look at it on the bright side too, is like, even the failures have a good learning impact for yourself.
So good. And I listened to your last podcast with your PT, your personal trainer.
Oh yeah, Chancellor, my lifting
Yeah.
coach. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciated like okay, I'm a big Peloton girl. I
Yeah.
run around my neighborhood at 7,500 feet. How much has strength changed your hunt? Or
Well,
do you know yet? Is
yeah,
that
no,
this upcoming season?
well, no. So I used to be a competitive bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So I've always lifted in the gym. But what happened to me is I was married and I started drinking wine with my husband and traveling and eating cheese, and I gained a lot of weight and I quit working out. And then when I would work out, I was just really angry about it because I was so miserable because I'd let myself go because I was pretty
Right,
athletic.
right.
Um, And so for the last 2 years, I've made a really big effort. My first year, my big effort was, okay, well, how do I lose some of this body fat? Because I'd put like 35 pounds on and it was very foreign. I didn't even feel, right in my own skin. It's like, okay, well, my big focus was, okay, how do I get this body fat off? So I was doing a lot of low intensity target heart rate cardio. I wasn't lifting as much, but I'll tell you, doing the combination is way better. And now I'm focused on powerlifting. So the thing when you get out there and you're hiking a mountain at 8,000 feet to 15,000 feet, well, not 15, but 12, whatever, at
Yeah.
12,000 feet, I can't breathe. So for me, most of my hunting is at 8K. So when I'm out there and I have a 35-pound day pack on, I want to wake up on day one and feel the same as I do on day 10. If I'm going sheep hunting, I want to wake up on day 10 the same way I did on day one. So I want my muscles to feel good. I want to feel like my sleep has allowed me recovery. The other thing is strength also gives you balance. So I want to be able to step up on things, over things, and not fatigue out and lose my balance and fall.
Right.
I want to be able to carry the load. And so strength is everything. And as women, as we age, especially as we hit our 40s, it's really important that we strength train to help prevent diseases like osteoporosis and
Mhm.
bone loss, things that are really affecting us in later in age. But then also, if we can maintain and preserve our muscle and our strength, as we get older, our bones are stronger, we have more muscle, we have more metabolic machinery to prevent body weight gain in the form of fat. So muscle is the engine that burns fat. So lifting weights is so great just because it helps our bones. When I'm in my 70s, if I fall, I want to have strong bones where it's not going to break my hip, because we know a hip, if we fall and break our hip, it can be oftentimes terminal.
Mm.
Statistically, it's terminal within 3 to 6 months. So, if we can really take care of our body, especially as we start to lose bone, lose muscle, and really, focus on those things, is so important. And like I can weigh more and have more muscle and I look better.
Yes.
Like I'm not
Yep.
stressed over the scale, right? Like so I can be the scale that can fluctuate, but my pants are getting baggier and I feel better, and things are firmer as they were like when I was 20, or
Mm-hmm.
25. Things are firm and tight and where I want them, and not kind of floppy and things that kind of come with age, gravity.
Yeah. Well,
So
you said powerlifting. Is that like Olympic?
So yeah, I'm not a competitive power lifter. My coach is a competitive power lifter. I was actually going to enter a powerlifting match last summer, or no, last October. I broke my finger the week of my match, so I didn't go. So I did Hell Week and I did the whole prep work for powerlifting, and then I didn't do it. But my coach is a powerlifting coach, and so that's just the philosophy that we follow in our lifting protocol. I would not consider myself like a power lifter, but I'm a wannabe.
Oh, well, if someone asked if I'm a runner, and I'm like, well, I run 3 times a week. And they're like, well, when I started my first ultra marathon, like there's always someone that's gonna like knock you out of that
Sure, sure,
distinguished. It doesn't mean you're not. It just means
sure.
that someone out there is more so
Yeah.
than you are. That's good. I want to know, like, okay, think about you're propped up all day, just glassing. What have the woods taught you?
You mean like the parts where that's monotonous? Is it, or are
Yeah.
you just like I don't know. I don't get bored out there. It's not monotonous to me. So that's where my life is out in the outside. So even when I'm home, like I'm in like this little office cage and I can't wait to get out. To me, it's a part of my soul. And a lot of people have to have a lot of noise around them. I'm kind of the opposite. I don't have kids, so I don't have kids screaming. I don't have a TV on in the background. My life is very quiet. So when I get out in the woods, it's very at home for me. I'm not, when I'm riding my mules and horses, I don't have a radio playing. I don't have like this ambient sound. I like and enjoy just basking in nature. And that to me is very therapeutic. And so, when I do trade shows and stuff, I am a
Hmm.
very outgoing person and I'm very extroverted, but I'm also very introverted. So like trade shows, big crowds, they're very overwhelming to me. And I feel like I do a very good job at like being in them, but it is exhausting to me, like emotionally, to be in a crowded room. I have a midnight rule. So when I do trade shows, I don't do anything after midnight and I really try to be out by 10. And so uh like for me, being out is just my place where I'm settled. And I really feel like people that maybe don't have the opportunity to live with that quiet calm that I live with most days, when they experience that for the first time, it can be really, really life changing, because you don't realize how much junk you're carrying in your brain and your mind and in your soul just from the noise of every day. And turning that off, how healing it is. Your blood pressure lowers, your psyche improves, you reconnect with nature, you notice things that, you know, when you're in town and you're listening to the neighbor mow their lawn and you're listening to the cars go by, there's certain sounds that nature makes that you totally lose the objective
Mm.
hearing for. But when you're out there and it's quiet and you hear them, you're like, oh my gosh, I've never heard that before. I've never seen that before. I've never noticed that before. So it really kind of puts you back in touch with nature, and then also spirituality, like your own spirituality. It's a place to reconnect and listen and um kind of self-reflect and meditate and think and get in your own head in your own space and kind of work through life.
Absolutely. My husband came back from multiple day trip and I kept like, just being silly and like, doing jokes. And he was like Sherlock Holmes, like he's just back and observant. And I was like, what changed? I was like, oh, you're not stressed.
Yeah.
You are super serene. It was really cool to see. And now I'm like, hey, you should go out and fill a tag and
Yeah. Well, and it's
go
hard too
relax.
because I have friends, we're in that age where like people are getting blood pressure problems and we have
Hmm.
work lists and we have like these lists of life and work that occur. And then you add kids and husbands and cooking and cleaning and all of these things to that docket as a woman. Our workload is really big. And sometimes I think it's women need to I know women need to take more time and say, okay, I have to do this for me. And that's where having extreme ownership is so important, of penciling something in for yourself. So whether, like for me, I lift with Chancellor 3 days a week. That is my time. It doesn't matter what I have going on in life. I write it in my day book. We plan my lifting schedule a month in advance and I build my life around that. And I think there's so many women that are incredible wives and incredible mothers that really need to learn to build their own little retreat into their schedule for themselves so that they can have some peace. And you come home and you're a better mom, you're a better wife for it, because your brain, your heart, your soul, you're refreshed, and it just makes life better for you. And when the kids are screaming or there's things going on, it's easier for you to manage them when your own personal stress level and anxiety is lower.
Yeah, absolutely. Or the amount of sport commitments and
Yeah.
school commitments. And I hear some schedules. I'm like, dude, you got to get out of the city. You need to hang out with some birds for a little while.
Yeah, yeah, well, and I think that's why so many people are doing like these little mini farms,
Mm.
because it does get you out. You go out and you get your eggs from your chickens, and you have little goats, and you have responsibilities, and those responsibilities that you have to those animals allows you to focus on something else, outward focus instead of inward focus, and it's really cleansing for your heart and soul. I mean, if I've had a bad day, the one thing I look forward to is going out to my mules and stuff. Like yesterday I went out
Mm.
there and they're so cute because they're a half mile away on the midway up my pasture, and I call to them. I'm like I yell ponies, and they come running to me, and it's like literally I call it the Wyoming Derby, because they're running and they're bucking and they're playing, and just the sight of that is like, ah, this is so awesome. Like, I mean, if I had kids, my kids would be like, here comes here comes the ponies, whatever. It's a great thing. Like, just having that natural escape every day not everybody has the luxury of having a ranch, but you don't have to have that. You could go for a walk in the park. You can anything to get outside.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to transition just a little bit. I mean, selfishly, I want to ask about like how you got started in this space of content creation and editing and getting your brand and building that empire to impact so many.
So for me, it started with service. So again, I was volunteer with SCI in my early 20s and I wanted to learn. And so I figured no one else in my community was being the champion for what I wanted to learn. So I did it myself. And I just became a leader in that capacity just because I wanted to learn. Well, then
Mhm.
things just kind of rolled out from there. I ended up working with a company called She Outdoor Apparel, which now Bass Pro owns. And when I started working for that company, it was called She Safari, and I helped them do a corporate rebrand and actually designed their current logo that they use. But in doing that, what I did with my marketing managers is I said, look, if you let me go out and do these seminars, I will encourage stores to bring clothing in for women because there wasn't a lot of women's clothing
Mhm.
20 years ago. So I would go to these dealers and say, look, if you bring in our clothes, I will do seminars for women because women want to learn, women want to hunt, we want to be involved. And so I started doing that about 20 years ago, and that was really brand building. And then I co-hosted the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation's Team Elk TV show for a number of years. I think 6 seasons. I co-hosted that with Brandon Bates. I was, working with Cabela's, and then I started my own show. It really wasn't intentional. How it started with TV is that RMEF had brought in my women's clothing for their banquet program, and I had met them. And then I noticed that as a nonprofit organization, they did not have a female face. Um, Representing hunting, and I was like, let me be that face, and I was relentless in my pursuit,
Mm.
and finally they
Mm.
brought me on their team. And so that's how the TV started. It wasn't really intentional so much. It was, my selfishly in the beginning I wanted to learn, so I was, working with my SCI chapter on that, and then later on it moved into kind of a retail job. And then it just went from there to media. I helped Under Armour launch their women's hunt line as well. And that was kind of a fun pivot point to help them launch that. And then from there in my, I think I was 31 or 32. It's like, then when I started full-time media.
Cool. And how much of that is you and how much of that is team?
What do you mean, me and team?
How much are you doing and then how much is like delegated?
So I'm the executive producer of everything. So all my podcast interviews, just like you reaching out to me, I do all of that on my side as well. I do all of my own scheduling. I executive produce all my own storylines. I book my own cameraman. I do everything. I have a full-time editor. Jordan Budd is my one of my best friends, and she also edits all of my episodes. So we'll go into an episode, and when she starts editing, I'll say, okay, well, this is kind of the storyline. This is what happened with the hunt. And then she'll put it together. Then I'll write voiceover for it. And then she will go in and kind of finalize and like match. Hold on, my little dog wants to see you guys. Kind of go in and match the voiceover with clips with my voiceover. So we work together as a team. So I produce my own podcast, and then I have an editor that actually puts the podcast together for me. Um, and then, when I'm in the field, I've self-filmed a couple of hunts last year, but I also work with different field producers that I bring in. And so I do everything. I do delegate some editing work, but everything else is on me.
And that's where the discipline comes in and just a little bit every single day.
Every day. Yeah, I have the list making queen. So yeah, so I do it all. I do my own travel arrangements, my own content. So like I did commercials last year for OnX and for Ruger. So I'm storylining my own commercials, and then I'll work with a producer. I'll write VO, and then I'll work with a producer to come up with a shot list, and then we'll get on location and create shot lists. And so I'm producing and doing everything.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. It's easy if you aren't disciplined, it's easy to probably get really behind.
Mm.
So like for me, I just do a lot of list making, and okay, this is due here, and then you can kind of prioritize your workload as well based on that. But you have to, I mean, I have to treat it as a job because it truly is. And then I have to build time in for myself also because part of the problem with being self-employed, like I don't take weekends off. So like I will work Saturday and Sunday. I'll work 7 days a week, but I'll take the afternoon for myself. And then midweek, if I have a great weather day and I take an afternoon for something I want to do for myself, I don't feel bad about it because I've also worked the weekend. So what I try to do is on bad weather days like today when we have a lot of
Mhm.
snow, like this is a great day for me to put 10 hours in at the desk. And then on a day that we have 74, I might put 5 hours in or six, and so I can kind of adjust my schedule then around that. But, there's also like last night I was working until 9:30 at night uploading clips and transferring footage because I have some deadlines, and so it's also, it can be hard. When I was married, my husband was in Europe, and over Christmas, he would take Christmas break, and I was distributing photos from the fall, and I was, working on trying to work with my editors on getting reels put together, and so there's a lot of it where like I don't really take like a normal vacation.
Mhm.
Like I'll take part days and enjoy part days and still work part days. So it I love the way it works. For me, it works great. I don't, feel like because I'm hunting for a living also,
Right.
um, like those times in the field, um, I'm doing what I love anyway. It's not really, I don't, but there's a lot of objectives. So it's like, okay, well, we need to do photos for this partner and we have to shoot this content. And so there's always I put together a production book of objectives on every hunt so that we make sure that we fulfill all of those objectives and meet those deliverables for each hunt so we don't forget product lines and whatnot. So and those are conversations that we'll have like a pre-production meeting with my producers and make sure that that everything's okay, this is what the expectation is when we go on this trip. This is what we're going for. And then then we tend to not miss as much opportunity. It's not always 100% getting everything when you're on a hunt because you're hunting. So sometimes you get bad weather or whatever, and things don't always work out the way you want them to. But you do your best.
Absolutely. And most people's vacation is hunt anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
use all their vacation time to do what you're doing, but
Well,
they don't
and
have to necessarily work while they're doing it.
I know I had a girlfriend ask me the other day, she's like, "Oh, where do you want to go on vacation one day?" I'm like, "I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to be home." This is my staycation. Like I love being home and being here because I'm so blessed with what I get to do year round. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. Like if there's something I really want to do, I plan for it, I budget for it. I'm a huge follower of Dave Ramsey.
Mhm.
And so I really believe that if you're willing to live like no one else, you can live and give like no one else. I really try to plan my money really strategically. I eat at home, I don't eat out. Everything I own is paid for. I try to cash flow everything. And then if I want to do a trip, then I save money and I don't live on credit. And if I can't afford something, I don't do it. I'm terrible about buying clothes. I don't ever do it. Like, yeah, no. And so like the other thing too, moving to Wyoming, it saved me a bunch of money on
Mhm.
non-resident hunting. And the other thing I tell people, like I booked a sheep hunt 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago, and I've been making like I have a savings account and I've been making payments on that sheep hunt for almost 5 years now. And I have a lot of people that'll say, "Well, I can't afford that. It's a $35,000 hunt. I could never afford that." And it's like, okay, well, how many days a week do you go to Starbucks?
Mm.
How many days a week do you eat out? And so I don't go to Starbucks. I don't eat out unless I'm traveling. And um you'd be surprised at the tens of thousands of dollars you spend a year at Starbucks. Most families spend over $5,000 a year at a Starbucks buying juices and hot chocolate and pup cups and coffee that they don't really need, and they're sacrificing their future dreams for that. And that's something that a lot of people don't really think about. And I always say you can afford it, you're choosing not to, or you're choosing to have a $700 a month car payment instead of driving an old paid for car. You're trading your dreams for that. And that is the reality of it. So I just
Let's
choose to
go.
live very simply. My truck has 200,000 miles on it, it's paid for. And living like that allows me to have the financial ability to live some of my bigger dreams.
Huge. I want to ask you about your jewelry brand.
Yeah. So, like 10 years ago, I went to Montana. Well, so 10 years ago through RMEF, actually, it was kind of random. They were like, the the CEO of our RMEF at the time, David Allen, was really good friends with the accountant at Montana Silversmiths, and David introduced me to them. He's like, I think you would be a really good, brand ambassador for them, because they have like a little ambassador team. And at the time, I was getting ready to pitch Cabela's for the concept of a jewelry line, because at the time I was the
Hmm.
female face of Cabela's. And so I started working with Montana Silversmiths on this concept, and it was just a God thing, the right people, the right place, right time. So we launched the jewelry line. I wanted it to be something that was unique, so it's all outdoor inspired, but I wanted it to be solid sterling silver because Montana Silversmiths is a plated silver product, and I wanted solid sterling because I wanted my jewelry to be more of like a keepsake. And so I built and designed this collection with them. We were going on 10 years. And yeah, it's solid sterling silver. It's all of the elements of it are things that you're going to find in nature. It's wildlife inspired, so deer and elk, moons, and it's been fantastic. It's been a really exciting project that I can't believe has lasted this long. My jewelry's in 500 retail locations around the country, and um, it's really it's so awesome when I like walk into a Big R or Murdoch's or Cal Ranch, and I look in their jewelry case, and my brand is in there. It's unbelievable, actually.
And if someone wants to find it, do you have an online outlet as well, or some stores that you can recommend to find?
So yeah, like any ranch and home store, like your local stores, a lot of local like gas stations that have jewelry cases from Montana will have it. And then I have it on my website. So Pursue the Wild, if you just click the shop tab, you can shop the whole collection on there. And I really wanted it to be something, like they had an element that reminded someone of a memory. So I've like a lot of elk antler jewelry. So I imagine a wife and a husband, maybe the wife harvests her biggest bull elk or her first bull elk, and they celebrate that with this jewelry piece. Or a dad takes his daughter on her first deer hunt, and he brings her, the mule deer shed necklace, and gives it to her as celebration of her first hunt success. So all of these little things, I wanted them to kind of spark a memory, and help you feel like connected to a wild place. So, when people compliment your jewelry, like, oh, what does that remind you of? Oh my gosh, my husband got me this, or my dad got me this when I had my first deer hunt. And so I wanted it to be an element that was really tied with commemorating an outdoor experience.
Amazing. I'm going to go pick mine out for my first harvest. Kristy, thank you so much for joining me today. Your insights on self-reliance conservation have been incredible. I really love your tenacity and dedication.
Thanks.
Something that we can all take away from this conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow Kristy's work and continue learning. As always, thank you for being part of the Creative Mountain Mama community. If this conversation inspired you, share it with a friend and stay tuned for our next episode.